Good morning, everybody. Oscar, hey, good morning. I have to start out, as I'm sure many people do, you look fantastic. I know you had a heart transplant, and I mean, it's just cool you're with us. And so I guess I want to start out with a human question. How does United Airlines look to you after a heart transplant? Well, what matters and what doesn't?
As I think of your thematic, the what's next, I think for me, what's next is starting a conversation with someone in the public space that doesn't begin with that question. That's how good I'm feeling.
But let me zero in on the human side of it, because I know that you've been very focused on trying to make the friendly skies friendlier and focusing on the human dimension of contact and travel and thinking about that. And it just made me think over this last day that sometimes moments like that, personal moments for you as a CEO, setting a standard for everyone, that there's certain things to worry about in life and certain things not to worry about in life. So what do you worry about?
Well, gosh, that was 3 questions, so let me get back to the original one with regards if anything has actually changed since I've come back. Clearly, there probably something has been, but my opening letter to my employees dealt with the same issues I would deal with today, and I always rejected the cultural notion that asset-intensive business, which my former business, railroads, and my current business, runways, are asset-intensive. And you don't have to trade off efficiency and productivity, which is in the public valuation space, for great customer service. And that thematic and that viewpoint sort of permeates in everything we do at United now, and to a degree what we did at CSX, my former company. So what's changed as I've come back is the element that's been added for me is the level of human engagement required. An airline is a people business, plain and simple. And we have 86,000 of them that, 2/3 of them have to get up every morning, every day, every shift and do the right thing. And so what's changed from my perspective with my illness, the outpouring of affection, genuine affection from all of those folks while I was sick is what sort of drove me to come back, and it's given us sort of the special sauce that I think is going to take us, and it's already beginning to take us to what I call the new spirit of United. So,
well, thank you. One of the things we've been wrestling with and talking about is technology, but what's next isn't all technology. I mean, it isn't all just that. That can mean a lot of different things. But as you look 20 years forward at the future of a major airline and that moves everything like United, what do you see coming?
Oh gosh, first of all, personally, innovation and technology, all that it brings is an extremely exciting possibility. We've seen so much scale and move over the last few years, and so excited about all of that. But when you lead a company of the magnitude that I do, with all that human quality to it, you have to break down the concept of what's next from an innovation perspective in 2 ways. There's what I call relevant innovation, right? It has to be useful to me. So when we think, and I think Dennis was here yesterday, I'm sure he talked about the potential for supersonic travel.
Right.
Bradley was here from UTC with regards to electrical engines. All of those are great concepts that at some point in time in the future, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, will be available to us. Those are great, and I have to keep my eye on those. But I have to deal with things that are relevant today. And so as I think about things that are important to us, that affects all of you, air traffic control reform, next gen, which is a technology that's out there, but we're not implementing because of political issues and sort of.
So what is the cost of that? I mean, because I wanted to ask you about infrastructure.
It's massive.
And when you look, we're right now in a time of choice for the President of the United States. We have senators and congressmen being elected, but infrastructure seems to be this big, giant basket of stuff. What parts of infrastructure do you think have been neglected that need immediate attention?
Gosh, there's so many. My former role also dealt with infrastructure, and so the highways and bridge systems in America haven't been invested in 70 years. And with regards to things like air traffic control technology, which has probably been around since the 50s, I'm going to say, we still have ground to air, and we've all experienced spotty Wi-Fi, right? That's in essence what we have in the airline space today. And what is required for us in order to fly safely, which is by far the thing that we have as the highest priority, is you have to space aircraft. And so when you say, hey, listen, I could drive there quicker than you can fly, you're probably right. But again, because of air traffic control and safety, we have to worry about those things. But those are massively expensive. It has to be a fundamental shift in how our administration thinks about these things, whether it's roads or runways. I think it has to be something that we as a nation want to do.
So explain it to me. I mean, we've talked a lot about big data as well, and I can't imagine that an organization like United isn't swimming in big data. Do you find that your own systems, your own communication, your own methodologies are vastly far ahead of, say, where air traffic control and the sort of airports and the kind of fixed in, what happens when you're light years ahead and your partners are not?
Well, it's a low water mark if you're comparing us to that group, unfortunately. We are evolving, with 86,000 people having to do the right thing every day. Internal communication is a really, really important issue. So we are introducing all what for our world is modern. Not because it's modern, it wouldn't be modern to you, but in a world of this largesse, it's hard to roll things out practically in time in order to make it work for us. So swimming in big data, I would say we're, like all big companies, drowning in big data and how to use it, and everybody's trying to figure out. I mean, big data as a concept has been around for, at least a decade, and who's really using it well? We're beginning to. We think of things like travel journeys, but the broader sort of technical term is personalization. How do we take all that information? How do we know exactly where you're flying, where you possibly flying? How do I anticipate your needs? How do I provide a level of comfort when maybe we provided discomfort at some point in time? If we failed you a couple of times, I should know, we should know, the next time you book a flight, we're all over you saying, hey, listen, Steve, I understand, didn't work out the last couple of times. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send a car for you at your hotel tomorrow morning. I'm going to get you in through a special TSA line so you don't have to wait. And my God, my new Illy coffee at United is going to be waiting for you at your seat when you get there. But knowing that you're already a little sort of concerned about our service and anticipating that and be able to personalize that issue across 140 million sort of customers that fly us every year, I think is an application of big data that's doable and doesn't have that grandiose sort of expectation and objective. And that's what a relevant innovation for me. I have to apply it, and I have to apply it across a large scale. So I love the big ideas. I mean, supersonic travel would be awesome. We have one thing. I don't know. I don't know if Dennis talked about it. I mean, the possibility for steeper angle aircraft landings and takeoffs. That opens up an entire new world of where you can build airports and the size of airports that don't require the footprint that's required today. So at the end of the day, we, like a lot of us, want to connect people to the rest of the world and can't for a lot of different reasons. So there's all sorts of exciting things out there.
I was reading, like anyone interviewing the CEO of United Airlines, I ran to Google News to sort of see what's been in the news. And there was this one very unusual story, and I'm just wondering if these kinds of things hit your desk, of two Pakistani men that were on an airline and on the plane, and they asked not to be seated next to a woman, and so the United agent moved the woman without asking her, and then did, and it created this interesting. And I can't imagine how frustrating that might have been to have that land on your desk. But what do you do in that sort of situation where customer service to satisfy one ends up in a kind of misogynist frame? What sorts of values do you try and inculcate your team with so that when these hard choices come in, I couldn't have dreamt that situation happening, but I imagine it happens more than most of us know.
I tell you, that is one of the greatest ills of our planet, the lack of empathy for others. I mean, it's just, to me, disgusting that it continues to happen every single day in so many different ways. So you raise a very important sort of racial and religious aspect of that. But we also have people with companion animals. And there is not a single good deed that I can do on an airline that does not get punished. Plain and simple. So I get, my email box, it just gets filled with both sides of it. Hey, thank you for doing the right thing, to what have you become? You're obviously a foreigner as well, and that's why you're doing this. So it's just a whole vast of issues. How dare you board children before me, because I made a life effort on my, this is a customer writing to me, how dare you board children and subject me to that, since I've decided I didn't want to have children, so why should you be able to do that? How dare you let an pilot delay a plane?
How do you navigate that?
There's ways you would like to, but because they're always punctuated with, and I'm seriously thinking about, choosing another carrier. And you just smile, you just want to say, okay. I have their names and numbers if you like. No, listen, we love all our passengers, but again, everybody, and this is back to the concept of empathy for others, as opposed to that sort of, what are we calling it, that there's a gap, I forget, there's always all these new terms that are coming up with regard, empathy gap, right, that it's talking about, that's more cultural, but I just see it. The night of dinner, we had a great conversation about the possibility of technology, so virtual reality, immersion, Oculus Rift, being able to have us experience
Flying like a bird, Max.
Or a refugee camp,
Right.
There's so many things going around the world that we understand, sometimes we read about, and then it's like, oh, listen, it's time for lunch, I'll go, right? And so the ability to immerse yourself and actually be in a refugee camp and see and potentially smell, is that the great innovation that kills this empathy gap that we're building? That'd be awesome. But again, back to the practical realities, I got to get planes on time, I got to get people to smile, and I got to deal with very similar issues that you just mentioned. And there's no way to train 25,000 of my best flight attendants out there to deal with these kinds of things, because no matter what they do, someone is going to take a different viewpoint.
Do you think we're going to see an age where the flight attendant is a robot?
No.
No. How about the pilot?
Either. I have the best pilots and the best flight attendants.
Because one of the interesting things that came out in the dinner the other night was the likelihood of having, we could have them today, pilotless airplanes, and that many argue that they would be far safer.
Yeah, I think in the lifetime of many of us in this room, not all, I think the technological capability to do many things will be available. The social acceptance of such will be an interesting one. Do you want to be served by a robot? Do you want to be flown into a storm by, in essence, a robot? I think those are issues, again, back to the practical aspects. That technology may be there, but again, I've got 11,000 of the finest pilots in America that are working for us today that I want to keep employed for a while.
When you were at CSX, I also discovered this interesting thing that you worked both for Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola. You may be the only one who's survived. If you guys don't know, working for both of those companies is a rare, very rare thing to do. But I'm interested in when you came into United, and I know you'd been on the board of directors before your predecessor, and you were selected. What was your biggest aha moment, or the surprise, given that you've worked with so many other big name brands that dealt with different things? What is the new muscle that you had to develop at United that you didn't have at CSX or other places?
The new muscle, they're very similar. Asset intensive, labor represented, vast networks of distributed workforce. Meaning, a room this large for me in my world is a massive crowd. 4 or 5 people sitting at the airport, you'll see me deviate immediately to talk to them, because to me, that's a crowd in our space. So the distributed nature was how to interact and communicate with so many humans, where it's absolutely required that the human touch, the values that I espouse with regards to treating others and customers well, how people out in the workplace get it as well. And we communicate in so many different ways. We have a lot of creative, innovative ways of communication, but you can't reach that many people. And what you find is social media carries most of that weight. So me talking to 2 people, that immediately gets spread to 100 people. And so I think that's been the biggest continuing sort of challenge, as to how we have the voice of United be what I call a United, as opposed to a lot of different factions speaking in their own voice.
I know that on Thursday you announced you were staying at Washington Dulles Airport. You folks in Chicago don't have to worry about losing your hub, but I know that Washington was not one of your favorite airports, and for those of you who fly through it, it's one of the crappiest airports in the United States. The people movers, it just sucks. And so how do you, and I would say that to the head of the airport authority, it's all above board here, but how do you make these decisions? Because you've decided to stay there, and what do you expect from a major hub where your footprint there also defines you as an airline? Because I know that there's so much you don't control within that airport relationship. But going to Denver, going to San Francisco or Chicago is vastly different than going to Washington Dulles.
Listen, we love all our hubs. They're different.
Which ones do you love more?
Yeah, my children have their internal ranking system. They rank each other. Every time they get in trouble, it's like, ooh, you're going to number 4. No, the variables on determining where you fly and how you fly are multiple, right? From economic to demand today, demand tomorrow, anticipating issues with regards to, the Silicon Valley space. We just started a couple of nonstop flights from San Francisco to Tel Aviv. Those are two of the greatest sort of technical communities that heretofore were not connected directly.
Right.
So you anticipate things like that. You think of a Dulles, regardless of its physical qualities, you work with local government, because you're right, we don't control almost anything other than your slots and the face-to-face touch that I have with you as a customer. Other than that, everything else is in somebody else's hand, whether it's
But don't you have power? Aren't you like a sports team? And sports teams go into cities and tell these cities to raise taxes to pay for the stadium. How is United? I mean, if you threaten to move to Baltimore, wouldn't Baltimore lean over backwards to give you everything you wanted?
Yeah, there's so many different qualities. And, I've never approached life with leverage, right? It's like anytime you have to assert that sort of muscle and testosterone, invariably it just doesn't lead to good long-term relationships. And so you do work with folks. Sometimes it's not always, it's just like a family, right? Sometimes we have good conversations and oftentimes we don't. But places like Dulles and the high cost they're in, the state kicks in some money and we have plans for the next few years to do some additional work there to make that more
One of the things that has the Oscar Munoz stamp on it is Polaris. New first-class seats, what they're doing. Tell us what you're doing with that and why you've started on that end of the aircraft to sort of change the dynamics with the customers you're trying to reach.
Gosh, one of the things in our business is transportation, hospitality is all the same. A brand new hotel, which everyone in the room has experienced, is always cool, right? It's like, oh, hey, listen, did you see the new place? And then 6 months later, it's like, yeah, it's getting a little tired. And hey, did you see the new place that opened up down the road? We have a similar issue with hard product in our aircraft. And as soon as we roll that out, Delta a few days later, or a few weeks later, months later, did theirs. Ours is better, but
How much better?
Listen, these bloggers that follow all this stuff compared our product to Emirates, which is like, that's, it's like our height difference.
Right.
And we came out. So he said 777 to 777, Emirates versus United, and then ... United wins. And it was kind of cool. It was kind of cool for our employees. Why? So the product itself.
You send that to all all employees.
That's the wonderful thing about social media. You don't have to do that.
I see.
Someone does that for you, which is the best way of communicating, right? How you talk about my business, how all of you talk about my business to your friends and family. That's the important part. What I say, how I say, everyone's going to sort of look at my viewpoints as biased or jaded, just because they should. But the product itself is terrific. It's leading edge. It's still one of the best ones. But we were set to just roll it out, like, okay, hey, tomorrow we're going to have a new product. We made a big deal of it for two different reasons. One, United had heretofore sort of been in the backdrop, a bit docile in how we communicate things, fun things that we're doing. And secondly, about our employee base was just lacking for any kind of energy and excitement. So we got a lot of press. As I dubbed that night, we were in New York, it's like, United takes Manhattan. You use phrases like that just kind of carry, and our employees smile a little more. And when they smile a little more, all of you, I'm telling you, all of you benefit from that, and that's what's important to us.
Now, I've read, and I don't know if this is in your control or if it's in the airplane manufacturer control, but I understand that in the Los Angeles-San Francisco route, you're using biofuels more. Is that a choice you're making to sort of create a greener opportunity? Is that in your bailiwick, or is that being decided elsewhere?
No, that is entirely us. In fact, I think 2009 was the first time we were the first commercial airline to fly. I think we flew from Brazil to the mainland on biofuel, algae-based. We've taken a pretty large equity investment in a company called Fulcrum that's going to be turning the whole waste-to-energy space that's been around for a long time, about as long as big data. This one has potentially more promise for us. We're working.
And how's it going?
It's going well. We will start a pretty significant amount of flights in the next year or so that will be biofuel based.
And is the scale there? You've got the infrastructure and the scale to grow that into the fleet?
Boy, it's hard to find scale with the amount of fuel that we use. But yeah, it'll be enough to start and to test. Pricing, which used to be the biggest barrier, has sort of moderated a little bit. It's still above current price, but it's lower than what high jet fuel price were a while ago. So scale in a massive way, meaning 100% of that's a ways away. But if we can start with an objective of, I'm not going to mention a percentage because someone will hold me to it, and I don't have those facts. But yeah, it has to be meaningful. You have to have a plan. And again, 98.5% of my carbon footprint, as you might imagine, is fuel.
Right.
And so
I want to go to all of you in a moment, but before I do, I want to ask you, I've been on the 787 Dreamliner a lot lately. What's your favorite plane in your fleet?
it's back to my children.
What are your kids' favorite planes in the fleet?
No, listen, I'm a fundamental and potentially naive believer that your flight experience is predicated by several issues. It's the whole experience. One of the things that we have to fix as an industry is today, you deciding to fly, there's always like a shrug of, oh, God, got to deal with traffic, got to deal with parking, oh my God, TSA, I don't know if it's going to be short or long. So frankly, by the time you get into one of our aircraft and sit in one of our beautiful seats.
I listened to that song, Stressed Out.
That's right.
Yeah.
And no matter what I serve you, you're not, using another technical term, you're probably pissed by then. So we have to make the entire experience better. And as somebody said, even a piece of bread with a smile is better than a fillet with a frown, or somebody said that, I'm not sure. It's important. So rather than aircraft, it's the crew, the people you interact with, right? And we all experience customer service, and it doesn't matter the person that, mends your socks versus the person that, solves other problems for you. How people do it, customer service is a function that we sometimes have lost in today's world with what's next in technology and innovation, robotics, drones. There's a heart, and pun intended.
This is the most brilliant distraction I've seen of asking about what his favorite airplane is. In any case.
You learn this trait.
Yeah, and we have a few minutes, but if you were to tell Boeing, say in the Boeing planes, or you can do this in Airbus, what's the one thing they don't get that you wish they did, that if they did understand something, it would really help you achieve your objectives better?
Is Dennis here?
He's watching, he's at the table.
The planes are too expensive. No. No, listen, with all our partners, frankly, there's a lot of great collaboration. In fact, with Boeing, we're designing the space, what we call the new generation aircraft, which is all secret and everything, but we involve ourselves in a lot of that. So we have great partners in this space.
Oh, that's great. Let me go to all of you. Let's turn on the lights and take a couple of lightning round questions here. Yes, right in the front. Yeah, and this is our Secretary of Labor in Illinois.
Hugo Chaviano.
Yes, good to see you.
Well, first of all, sir, great to see that you're in such great health, and God bless. But I was concerned about pilot morale today, and I grew up looking at pilots as an exalted, category of a profession. And today it seems that there is all kinds of tiers, including ones that you just seem to be nothing more than just sort of an Uber driver. And I was wondering, how is that being managed at United and in your view in the industry?
Thank you. Pilot morale.
Yeah, gracias. The pilot morale, the employee morale, all of that, I hesitate to ever opine on it in a way that's somebody else's fault. At the end of the day, how one of, in effect, my employees feels about himself or herself and their job is a function of what I do for them, what we as a leadership team do. So morale, high, low, or medium, is something that has to be managed. I approach it from, it is my responsibility, my concern, my worry, and all I have to do is work with you to get you to trust me more. And the first thing I started in this company, when we first, back in January, right when I was going in for my transplant, we determined what we call the North Star and all these wonderful jargonish sort of things.
Right.
But our first need in our corporation was to regain the trust of our employees and then our customers, because without the first, we didn't get the other. So morale is improving greatly. In fact, I'm going to see them tomorrow.
Yes, right over here. Hi.
Hi, Ben Pama from Chicago.
Hi.
Hi. What's your opinion on the O'Hare, remodeling project? And if you could say, what more can be done that maybe is or isn't in the plans?
Great.
So there's great plans. Ginger and the authority there, along with the mayor, we spent a lot of time working with them on the next gen of plans and the vision that we have. It all comes down to economics. There's a lot of great things out there. I think as we continuously work together, we'll figure out what's best for everybody at the airport and what's also most cost effective. Because again, a lot of those things get passed on in play.
But you sound enthusiastic about that.
Sure.
You sound less enthusiastic about Dulles.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
For the record, that is not true.
Okay, good. Other question, comment? Yes, right here.
Oh, here I am. Yeah. Hi, Robert Twickler from Chicago.
Hi, Robert.
I'm more of an occasional flyer, and I've noticed a lot of the low-cost carriers have been shrinking seats, reducing leg room, and kind of a race to the bottom line. Could you comment on what you see the future of seating arrangements are?
Yeah, seating arrangements are all, like, it's what I would term hard product. Everybody matches each other because of the efficiency. Somebody pulls 10 seats across on an international aircraft, we're all forced to do that just by the very nature of the economics. The trick is, how do you put the best seats out there? How do you give comfort as much as you can? Low-cost carriers obviously have their model, and that's what they work through. I have to match it in certain ways. I'll probably offer you very similar prices if you want that service, but you'll still have a lot more amenities from us. And so seats and seating arrangements are just difficult concepts to sort of ever talk about because we're just matching each other. And hopefully at some point in time we can provide greater comfort in thinking about you, but do it economically.
One last question.
Yep.
There we go. In the very back.
Morning.
Good morning.
Paul Barish. I'm a cardiac anesthesiologist, and so we've had a brush with the same spaces in the last year. I've been here since yesterday, and I'm wondering, both in your talk and previous talks of the CEOs that were here, there's very little discussion about the implications of healthcare costs and reform on the ability of companies to innovate. So I wonder if you want to discuss how large companies tackle
that's a great question. Healthcare costs and other big, tectonic costs that we may not see. How is that? How are you dealing with those?
So again, back to the practical application of anything that's out there. 75,000 of my employees are union organized and protected. And so the health products that they receive are based on that world and really not something I can do much of except offer to share cost. And I use the word offer loosely. With regards to our management employees, there's all sorts of the issues about wellness centers and all those functions that we're trying and working through. But I don't have a whole lot of innovative new thinking in that space. Again, because I have to apply it across so many different people. Consumer-driven health plan was a big issue for us, and the fact that we left a lot of employees wanting in the start of last year because all of a sudden that first bill is, if any of you have gone through that, you kind of, if you have a big medical bill right at the front of the year, you got to pay it all out of pocket, and most people can't afford that. And so a lot of room in that space. If you have any ideas, happy to hear them.
I want to just say as we wrap up here, this has been fun, but I am, in contrast to this gentleman, a regular, like every week, flyer on United. I'm a multi-million, and that means I've been very, very frustrated and very, very happy at various points. And it's kind of a, you forget the bad time when you have a good time. But the funniest time was when I got a letter from Oscar, and I felt it was personally directed to me, 1K flyer who occasionally is in the economy, well, often in the economy side, but he didn't want us to feel neglected. So you could get a glass of wine and one of the sandwiches as a 1K member. And I showed it to our flight attendant who said, that can't be true. That would be crazy. Everybody would want that. And I showed it to him. And he says, that's actually kind of cool. That was one of the nice. So your flight attendant was so surprised that management did that for the people there. So I thank you, but your flight attendant was very pleasantly surprised.
That's
so with that,
communication.
Oscar Munoz, thank you so
everybody.
much.
Appreciate it.